The sun was low in the sky, painting the dusty land with shades of orange and gold. Samuel, a traveler worn from long weeks on the trail, trudged across the rugged terrain. His clothes were dusty, and his boots bore the marks of endless miles. All he wanted was a place to rest, a roof to shield him from the wind, and food to calm the gnawing hunger in his stomach. The world felt lonely, and though he had seen other travelers along the way, most were strangers with their own urgent journeys. Samuel's only hope was to find shelter before night fell. As he walked, the trail wound between rocky hills and low, scrubby bushes. The land was harsh and dry, yet it had a beauty that Samuel had come to respect. Birds flew overhead, their cries echoing across the valleys, and a soft wind stirred the dust around his boots. The traveler knew he had to move carefully. This was Apache territory, and strangers were rare. But Samuel had no choice. He could not go on another night without rest. Soon, in the distance, he noticed smoke rising from a small cluster of wooden huts. His heart lifted. Perhaps this was a village, a place where he could ask for water and a warm place to sleep. As he approached, he slowed his pace, making sure his movements were calm and non-threatening. The villagers, he guessed, would be cautious, as any people would be if a stranger arrived unexpectedly. When Samuel reached the edge of the village, he saw a few men and women observing him from a distance. Their eyes were sharp, full of curiosity and careful suspicion. Samuel raised his hand slightly, a gesture of peace. "I mean no harm," he said softly. He spoke in English, hoping at least someone might understand. Though he knew many, Apache also spoke Spanish or their own language. A man stepped forward, older than the others, with lines of experience etched deep into his face. He studied Samuel quietly, then motioned for him to wait. Samuel nodded, relieved that the man did not wave him away immediately. Soon, a younger woman brought him a small bowl of water. Samuel drank deeply, feeling the cool liquid slide down his throat and soothe the dryness that had built up over days. He thanked her, bowing slightly, though he worried his words might not carry full meaning. The village was small but orderly. Huts made of wood and mud were clustered around a central area where children played and a few elders sat talking. Samuel noticed the women carrying firewood and tending to small gardens. The men worked with tools or watched the animals. Though wary of strangers, there was a sense of calm in the village, a rhythm of life that felt steady and grounded. Among the villagers were 3 widows, women who had lost their husbands in recent conflicts. Each carried herself with quiet strength. One of them had a gentle expression, her eyes soft but alert. Another was more serious, moving with a confidence that showed she had managed on her own for some time. The third had a reserved look, cautious but thoughtful. Samuel did not know yet that these women had spoken among themselves about him even before he arrived, imagining the possibilities of a life that could grow from this unexpected meeting. That evening, after Samuel had rested under the shade of a large tree near the center of the village, the 3 widows approached him together. Their steps were measured, respectful, and Samuel felt a mixture of surprise and curiosity. They did not speak immediately, instead, watching him with calm attention. He noticed small details: the way their hands moved, the quiet strength in their eyes, and the care in their posture. Finally, one of the women spoke softly, in a language Samuel partially understood. Using gestures and simple words, she offered him food and a place to stay in one of the huts. Samuel accepted gratefully, realizing that he had been lucky to find hospitality in such an unexpected place. He followed them to a modest hut, its walls built from sun-baked mud and wood, with a small fire pit in the center. The warmth of the fire and the smell of cooking food were welcoming beyond words. As Samuel sat by the fire, eating a simple meal of corn and roasted vegetables, he noticed the women exchanging quiet glances. They were not just offering food and shelter. There was an unspoken understanding among them, a plan that had formed even before he arrived. Samuel, exhausted and distracted by his hunger, did not yet grasp the depth of their intention. For them, a stranger was more than a visitor. He was an opportunity, a choice that could bring hope and companionship into their lives. The night fell, and the village grew quiet. Samuel lay on a mat near the fire, listening to the soft murmurs of conversation outside and the distant howls of coyotes. He thought of the long journey he had endured, the endless days of walking through harsh lands, and the nights spent under the open sky. Now, here, he felt a strange mix of relief and unease. Relief at having found safety, but unease because he sensed that this encounter would not be as simple as a place to rest. In the following days, Samuel learned more about the village and its people. He helped with small tasks, carrying water, tending animals, and assisting in minor repairs. The widows taught him skills he had never learned, from gathering herbs to identifying safe plants to eat. They shared stories of the land, of survival and loss, of the ways the Apache community endured hardships and celebrated life. Samuel listened with fascination, realizing how rich and deep their knowledge was. The widows, meanwhile, continued their quiet observation. They saw in Samuel a kind man, respectful, strong, and thoughtful. He did not rush, did not act arrogantly, and showed patience with tasks and people alike. They began to discuss among themselves what might happen if he stayed longer. It was not simply about companionship. It was about trust, partnership, and the possibility of building a life together. In Apache culture, widows could seek new beginnings, and offering a choice to a worthy man was a way to ensure the community remained strong. Samuel noticed changes, though he did not fully understand them. The widows were attentive, offering help in subtle ways, sharing food first with him, teaching him small skills. At first, he thought it was mere hospitality, but he began to realize that there was a deeper meaning in their actions. He felt honored, but also unsure. He had never imagined that seeking a simple rest would lead him into a situation where he was considered for something so important, something that could shape not just his life but the lives of others. Days passed, and the bond between Samuel and the widows grew. He learned to respect their strength, their courage, and their patience. They shared laughter and quiet moments of reflection. He saw their grief, yes, but also their hope. Each widow had a unique spirit, one gentle and caring, one practical and determined, and one cautious, yet wise. Samuel admired all three, realizing that choosing one would be both difficult and meaningful. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the village in golden light, Samuel sat by the fire thinking. He reflected on his long journey, on the kindness he had found in this unexpected place, and on the strange turn of fate that had brought him here. The widows approached, carrying baskets of food, and he realized that his simple desire for rest had transformed into something far greater, a connection to people who had faced hardship and yet remained strong, a community that had embraced him as one of their own. Samuel did not know what the next days would bring, but he understood one thing clearly. Life had a way of surprising even the most weary traveler. What he had thought would be a night of rest had turned into the beginning of a journey he could never have imagined, a journey of trust, learning, and the quiet possibility of new relationships. And though he was still cautious, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the kindness and courage of the three widows, whose lives had intertwined with his in ways he could not yet fully understand. Days turned into a week, and Samuel's life in the village slowly settled into a new rhythm. Each morning, he rose with the sun, helping with small tasks, feeding the animals, carrying water, and assisting in repairs around the huts. Though the work was simple, it was not easy for someone unused to the routines of village life. Yet, Samuel felt a growing sense of purpose, a connection to a community that welcomed him without judgment. The three widows continued to guide him gently. Each shared her skills and knowledge in her own way. The gentle widow taught him how to prepare herbs and plants for cooking and healing. The practical widow showed him the ways of farming, tending small fields, and caring for the animals. The cautious widow shared lessons in observation and patience, teaching him to notice small details in the land and the people around him. Samuel was grateful for their patience, and he tried hard to learn from each of them. Though Samuel's days were filled with work, his evenings were a time for conversation. The widows told stories of the past, of their husbands, and of the hardships and triumphs their families had experienced. He listened with respect, realizing that these stories were more than memories. They were lessons, teaching him about resilience, courage, and hope. Samuel felt a deep admiration for the widows, each of whom had survived loss and hardship with dignity and strength. The more time he spent with them, the more Samuel understood the purpose behind their initial proposal. The widows had not approached him lightly. Their offer was rooted in trust and practicality, in the hope of building lives that could support one another and strengthen the community. He began to see that this choice was not simply about companionship, it was about partnership, responsibility, and mutual respect. One afternoon, as Samuel helped the practical widow tend the small garden, he paused to look at the hills surrounding the village. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers, and birds flitted between the trees. He realized how much he had come to value this place. The village was quiet, but alive, full of people who understood the balance between survival and care. Samuel felt a sense of belonging he had not known in a long time. In the evenings, the widows often gathered by the fire, sharing quiet laughter and conversation. Samuel joined them, listening more than speaking, careful not to overstep. He noticed how the women watched him at times, their eyes reflecting thoughtfulness and patience. Each had her own way of showing care through gentle words, teaching, or small acts of kindness. Samuel realized that choosing one of them would be difficult, not because he liked them less, but because each offered something unique and valuable. One night, after a long day of work and learning, Samuel sat outside under the stars. The village was quiet, and the soft sounds of night, the distant call of a coyote, the rustle of leaves in the wind filled the air. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, about the loneliness he had felt on the trail, and about the unexpected connection he now had with these three women. He understood that his choice would not only affect him but also the balance of life in the village. Over the next several days, Samuel spent time with each widow individually. With the gentle widow, he shared quiet moments by the fire, learning about herbs and listening to her soft stories of family and survival. With the practical widow, he worked side by side in the garden and the fields, understanding her determination and learning the value of hard work and perseverance. With the cautious widow, he observed the land and the people, learning patience and the importance of careful thought before action. Through these experiences, Samuel grew to respect the strengths of each woman. He admired the gentle widow's kindness and understanding, the practical widow's determination and skill, and the cautious widow's wisdom and insight. He realized that the decision he faced was not merely about personal preference, it was about compatibility, respect, and the potential for a shared life of meaning. The village elders soon invited Samuel to speak with them. They had been observing him, noting his interactions with the widows and his efforts to learn and contribute. The elders spoke of the importance of trust, respect, and responsibility in any partnership. They reminded Samuel that the choice he made would be honored by the community, and that he should consider not only his own heart, but also the well-being of the village. Samuel listened carefully, feeling the weight of their guidance. After much reflection, Samuel began to feel a clarity he had not expected. He thought about the values and skills that mattered most to him, about the kind of life he wanted to build, and about the woman with whom he could share that life in harmony. It was not an easy decision, for he respected and admired all three widows deeply. Yet, in quiet moments, he realized who shared his vision of trust, partnership, and shared responsibility. One bright morning, Samuel approached the gentle widow. He spoke with honesty and respect, explaining his feelings and his choice. He expressed admiration for all three women, acknowledging the courage and strength of the practical and cautious widows. The gentle widow listened carefully, her eyes reflecting understanding and warmth. She accepted Samuel's words, and a sense of calm settled between them. The choice had been made, and it was respected by both parties. The practical and cautious widows, though initially disappointed, showed remarkable grace. They continued to live in the village, supporting the family and maintaining their valued roles in the community. Samuel was grateful for their understanding and continued guidance. Over time, he learned to see the strength in their presence, recognizing that the village thrived not because of individual choices alone, but because of mutual respect and cooperation. Life in the village grew steady and meaningful. Samuel worked alongside the gentle widow, building a home, tending the land, and learning the ways of the community. Together, they shared the responsibilities of daily life, from caring for the animals to preparing meals and maintaining the village's small gardens. Through shared effort, they built trust, respect, and companionship. Samuel found joy in the rhythm of life, in the simple satisfaction of meaningful work and honest connection. Evenings were times of reflection and story. Samuel and the gentle widow would sit by the fire, sharing experiences, listening to the wind, and watching the stars. The village continued its quiet life around them, full of laughter, care, and the steady passage of days. The practical and cautious widows remained close, offering advice and friendship, their presence a reminder of the strength and resilience of the community. Over time, Samuel realized that his journey, once a search for rest and shelter, had led him to something far greater. He had found belonging, trust, and the chance to contribute to a life of meaning. The unexpected proposal of the widows had transformed his path, teaching him lessons in patience, respect, and partnership. What began as a simple need for rest became a lifelong connection, rooted in shared experience and mutual care. The village thrived with this balance. Samuel's presence brought strength and skill. The gentle widow brought warmth and guidance, and the other widows continued to support and nurture the community. Together, they created a life that honored tradition, respected individual choice, and celebrated the quiet joy of survival and cooperation. Samuel often reflected on the journey that had brought him here, amazed at the twists of fate that had turned a simple desire for rest into a profound and lasting life connection. In the end, Samuel understood that the strength of the village, and of any community, lay in trust, respect, and willingness to embrace unexpected opportunities. The widow's proposal, initially surprising and unusual, had led to a life of companionship, shared responsibility, and belonging. Samuel's choice, guided by thoughtfulness and respect, had brought harmony to the village and to his own life. What had begun as a weary traveler seeking rest had become a story of resilience, care, and the quiet power of human connection. As seasons changed, Samuel and the gentle widow worked together to care for the village, the animals, and the small gardens that provided sustenance. They celebrated the simple joys of life, the warmth of the sun, the laughter of children, and the quiet peace of nights under the stars. The other widows remained close friends, sharing knowledge, guidance, and support. Samuel often thought about how extraordinary it was that a simple journey had led him to such a life, one filled with purpose, respect, and meaningful connection. The story of Samuel and the three widows spread quietly through nearby settlements, a tale of courage, respect, and the wisdom of community. Visitors marveled at how a chance encounter had led to lasting bonds, and how the village thrived through shared effort and mutual care. Samuel never forgot the lessons he had learned, the value of patience, the importance of listening, and the strength found in trusting others. And as he lay beneath the stars each night, he felt gratitude for the unexpected journey that had brought him home.